Hey, Link here. Thanks for joining me for episode 121, where I speak with Courtney Millman. In this episode, we talk about what got her into the industry, some words of encouragement, games that made her want to work with games, working on the games that inspired her, favorite games, their life outside of gaming, and some lightning round questions. Before we get started, don't forget there are links in the episode description that you can follow to learn more about Courtney as well as the podcast. Also, don't forget to like and share the episode, and without further ado, enjoy episode 121. Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by Courtney Millman, 3D character artist at Maxis. Hi, Courtney, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about stuff.
Awesome. I am also excited to talk about stuff, so thank you so much for joining me to talk about stuff. Sorry, I've joked for a while that like one day I'm hoping that when an episode opens up, I can just awkwardly be like, "So do you like stuff?" and see how it goes. So yeah, Courtney, you open that door. So do you like stuff?
I think I do. I think that there's a lot of stuff to like out there, even if it's not necessarily something you're specifically interested in. Like, I think that's why things like Instagram and TikTok have become so popular because it like exposes you to tons of different niches and windows into people's worlds. And what could you describe that other than a bunch of stuff?
So thank you for that. I'm glad that worked out, that question. And I also agree, I think that's part of the intrigue for a lot of those, I'm gonna say nonsense, because anyone knows if you're like flipping through those like 60-second shorts or what have you, there's a lot of nonsense in between the not nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I don't I don't know if this is intentional or not, but like, the need to try and find something interesting that is not nonsense is very compelling. Um Dangerously compelling because, you sit there glued for way too long and then the next thing you know the sun is gone and you need to go to bed, right?
Totally. I even have like app timers to prevent me from scrolling too long because I'm like trying to balance my days better.
I can definitely relate to that. I have this little it's like a timer, countdown timer clock thing, that like it buzzes every 30 minutes. And that is a fantastic thing to set if you're like, I'm gonna get carried away. Um so like set it and then it buzzes and you're like, oh Jesus, and you can flip it and like not have to worry too much because now you've had like an external source say, hey, stop doing that stupid thing and like go get a drink or go do something productive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, Courtney, before we get started, though, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself, kind of like the 411, the elevator pitch, the things that you feel are like the most important things that someone should know, like before we start talking about some other things or other stuff.
Mhm. Well, I think I'll go into maybe my like interview pitch almost, where it's like, I'm Courtney. I'm a 3D character artist. It's been in the industry now for almost 6+ years, I think. I got my start very indie, very early. I even like graduated into the pandemic, and during that time, like all you could really do was figure things out. And I have managed to work with a few really cool studios, one of which being with Ooblets, another being with Singularity 6, and I'm at EA/Maxis. And yeah, I do think something interesting about me is while my title and my outward perception is 3D character artist, I actually work a lot more with outsourcing, and I like to consider myself a game dev first before an artist. Because I always like to think that like I can create beautiful art whenever I want, but I can't make really amazing games with really cool people whenever I want. So for me, the like collaboration part of the industry is like such a huge inspiration and draw for my career and where I'm going.
Awesome. So thank you for sharing. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind speaking more to that, because like I and I apologize from my end. I don't fully understand. So would you mind speaking more to like what you mean by where your career is going?
Yeah, so I think with the type of person I am, I've always kind of known what I want to do a little earlier than the chance I get to do it. Like I went to college for animation and realized very quickly I really like 3D modeling, and I even asked, I consulted my parents because, you know, I was getting financial help being like, hey, what if I just took like mentorships and courses instead of continuing college so I could really focus on what I want? And they're like, get a degree. And I was like, okay. But then as soon as I graduated, while I was like working part-time, I like did mentorships and courses to really focus on my portfolio. And then when I started getting character jobs, I was like, wow, I really love working with like cosmetics and like giving feedback to like different team members. And I really see myself someday like becoming like a character lead or even like an art manager. And I think like every move in my career, with the best of my ability, has been to bring me closer to my goals of like eventually being someone who truly is just like the connective tissue of a team. I've always wanted to be the kind of person who helps hold open the door for others and helps make a team stronger. And I feel like I'm at my best, weirdly enough, when I'm not really doing like IC work and making art, but when I'm getting people in a room together and making plans and figuring out next steps and things.
So thank you for speaking more to that. And like I understand what you're saying, and I think that's really cool. Sorry, I'm trying to think of like the best words for how to phrase these things, but it's for whatever reason they're just the light bulb's not going off for me right now. But I understand what you're saying. And I think that's really cool, and I like the idea um, of holding the door open. You know, because like with the way the industry is right now, um,
Hmm.
the kindness of other people holding the doors open for more people that are trying to get in or trying to find a place. I think having people, if I understand what you're saying correctly, but having people like yourself that are like doing their best to find places for people, so that way the project can like be better or just be all that it can be. That's a weird slogan to drop anyway. Um, but like just to do that, I just think that's really admirable, and I think that's really cool. So thank you for speaking more to that and sharing that.
Mhm. And for me, I really feel like keeping the flow of like communication and knowledge open between people who are higher up in the industry and people who are just starting out is super important. I think that honestly, a lot of people even now are still recognizing that like you go to college and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna get a job because I went to college, and like especially with our industry and especially right now, like those things are not necessarily true, and it doesn't mean it's from a lack of passion, but sometimes like we have a lot of energy and it's about like where and how you spend that time and energy. And for me, it's always just really important to help illuminate like the best path for folks, and like I even mentor a few people on the side, and like I review portfolios and resumes a lot. So it's like really important for me to kind of like keep folks like understanding and informed about the industry. And it's like, especially right now, I can't promise anyone a job. I can't promise anyone anything, but I can promise that we can look at where folks are at, and when the industry's like luck of the dice shines on you, like you can be in a much more advantageous point than maybe where you were before we talked.
So I think that's awesome as well, because like the setting expectations or appropriate expectations, or like however you want to phrase that, I think is like really important because you know a lot of people, not just in relation to like making games and you know game dev and all that, but just in general, having appropriate expectations is a wildly difficult and rare thing to see people like setting up. Like, because I know when I went to school, for the record, I've went twice, and in both cases, there was a heavy hand of expectations not being like openly set that like, hey, this is going to be really hard.
Mm.
Like both of them would, both times it was like, yeah, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be competition and what have you, but none of them were openly being like, this is going to actually be way harder than you think of, or like the amount of competition is going to be way harder than you would think. So like,
Yeah.
I think it's a really good thing that there is people trying to set expectations, being like, hey, you're gonna really have to fight tooth and nail, and like this is a way to get a step ahead, right? With like a portfolio review, like um trying to like really guide it or pinpoint it or spotlight the things that you do really well versus, in my case, I went through for design instead of just having like a really rough portfolio that's just like, here's a bunch of stuff. What do you think? It's like, well, you need to do better than just that, right? So
Yeah.
I just think it's a really cool thing to like do that to try and help other people. Like you said, kind of like hold the door open when you can, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and especially right now, like, it's like, I'm just some guy at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes recruiters won't even reply to me, and I'm like, "You know what? That's fine." Like, everybody's really busy, everyone's doing their own thing, but, I think it can be really easy to get an idea of what applying to a job looks like. Like, when people get rejected, it'll be like, oh, what did I do wrong? Or what's the thing wrong with me? And that's not always actually the case. Like, oftentimes, weirdly enough, like rejection isn't personal. It's not like someone specifically pointing at you and saying you failed, but it's rather like usually teams looking for a very specific set of skills or style that really aligns with what they want and finding the best fit to help their ship sail. And I think a lot of folks, it's just about like figuring out the gaps that they have with their current skill set to be that kind of missing piece of a ship that'll help like a game succeed.
Yes, I understand completely what you're saying. Sorry, I'm laughing because as you're saying that, I remember I've had at least one. It's not been more than like one or two, but I've had at least one where someone replied to me. They were like, "You are definitely not good enough for this. Go away." And it's like, well, that was rude.
It's just not
Um,
helpful.
no, it really isn't. Like, look, if you're gonna say to me, "Hey, you're not good enough. This is why." That's one
Mhm.
thing. But it's another just to be like, "You're definitely not good enough for this, go away." Like, "Oh, okay,
Also
thank
in
you,
an
that was
industry,
constructive."
like people are constantly being like, "Oh yeah, apply to senior even if you're not senior because maybe they're hiring more than one." Like, and it is true. Like my role at Palia, I got hired for a mid-level role as a junior, and like I have friends who have been hired for applying for senior roles as mids, and it's just like, it's like worth a shot as long as you can handle the psychic damage of rejection. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I would like to say this as well for anyone that's listening that might be in a position of hiring, don't be a prick and email someone back with, "You're definitely not good enough for this." Don't be productive or be constructive if you're gonna try and do that.
Yeah, if you're gonna
Don't be
be
a jerk.
specific, at least be productive. Like, auto rejects hurt, but they hurt less than that. Jesus.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly, exactly. Um, Now, Courtney, I am curious about this because you mentioned that like you went to school, and you've been doing this for about 6 years, so you would have came out of this right around the time of
mhm.
right when the like right around the time the pandemic was just going full swing, when things got, I'm gonna say weird with weird air quotes as well for that one. But I'm wondering, what is it that got you into developing and making games? Like I know that you said originally it was animation, so it wasn't like initially school or not school. It initially was not game related, but like I'm wondering like how that transition happened. I know
Yeah.
you touched on it, and by all means, if what you said was pretty much the end all be all for it, by all means, feel free just to say that. Or, but if there was more to it, I'm just wondering if there was more to it.
No, if anything, I think I had a very interesting and windy path to where I'm at, and I think it also involves like social media. But truly, um, I went to art school, and I have like older siblings in my family who like pursued uh like their majors because they were interested in their majors and not necessarily like the end goal of what a career looks like. And I saw them struggle just a bit for the first 2 years out of college be like, oh wait, now that has to turn into a job. And I was like, okay, I need a job. You know what I mean? And I've always absolutely loved games, and I've grown up on games even before I was even the one playing them. But I think for some reason, especially because my family was like the Nintendo console family, I was like, games aren't made here. And I didn't really see it as an avenue until I went to college and I started talking to other folks, and they had a big interest for games. And I started, I actually got into like Twitter because of one of my best friends, and honestly, it's one of the best things that happened in my career. And I started just posting progress, posting anything. I often also made a really important habit of commenting on other people's work, and I mean like genuinely commenting on it, and being like, wow, I really love how you rendered this, how did you do that, or like, wow, this is like so amazing, like, and that's a part of me I do miss, but that's also a part of me that existed before I had a full-time job. um and I truly built up a, I don't want to say like reputation, but like a corner of myself on Twitter and on art Twitter, where I would be constantly talking with people and constantly engaging. And at the same time, I was also constantly getting better at art. Um, Not disrespectfully, but no thanks to my college, more so thanks to my peers and honestly Twitter, because I was looking outside of college for answers as I realized the education at my college just wasn't in a place to support the high caliber of the industry. And like through that, I actually on like one of the portfolio day tweets got a DM from the Ooblets team being like, hey, we tried to email you to hire you, but the email bounced because I misspelled my last name with one L instead of two because I had like a sticky finger moment. And like, thank God the email bounced because I got to work for Ooblets. And I mean, yes, everything got weird. I actually even had a like local small internship in Ohio, which is where I went to college. And they went on furlough because of the pandemic, so I also kind of lost my job. And I was like living with my sisters, and I was like, okay, I can be sad, or I can be sad and I can work on my portfolio. You know what I mean? And like throughout the pandemic, I really focused and honed in on my craft as much as I could while like supporting myself. Um, and I was able to, because of my social media presence, like often attract different indie folks, or I would comment under indie folks, apply to anything, being like, hey, I would super love to work on this project, or like, hey, they would want someone to make like a few quick characters. And I do think working indie first is hard, but is honestly the way most folks get in these days. And what makes it hard is because I think the best learnings happen with a team, and when you work with indie, you're kind of your own team, so you're really floundering a lot, but you're also learning a lot. Um, and throughout like building my own kind of caliber of work, as well as like uh the two mentorships I had, which I'm very, very grateful for, I was able to also build up my skill set to a point where when I applied to Singularity 6, they were very interested in me. And I took a art test and I was luckily selected. And, you know, that is kind of like the journey into the industry, I feel like, which I can also touch on certain points if they're interesting. But I'm also like, that's kind of like the road, you know what I mean?
Yes, and you know, I I'm gonna paraphrase this, so don't mind the paraphrasing, but I really like the mindset of, well, I can be sad I don't have a job, or I can be sad and productive I don't have a job. Um, and that's, you know, that's that's a wild thing to think. But thank you for sharing that. I really liked the you know, just the road to that, and like, you know, realizing that you had the time, so you might as
Mhm.
well try and get better, and like, you know, just seeing where that went. Um, I'm also wondering from your experiences if you have any like words of encouragement to share, and if if one of them is really just be productive and sad, by all means, give her. But if you have another, like anything else that's encouraging you'd like to share, whether it be like to another younger person or like a younger version of you or what have you, by all means, I'm curious what that might be.
Well, I think I honestly have a few because I think our industry, a lot of people just see success or hear about success and they don't understand like how much failure comes along with success. Like I talked about contracting for multiple studios during the pandemic, but like honestly, there was a few where they were like, hey, this isn't gonna work out like because of my skill set wasn't where it needed to be. Or like, hey, like I even would get overwhelmed. I think at one point I was making a personal project, taking a CGMA course, doing contract work, um, and taking my art test all at the same time. And I like genuinely two of those balls were like I truly dropped the ball with that contract work, and I was very lucky the team was very understanding of me and gave me like a month off. But like sometimes like things don't work out right away, or sometimes you finally get, oh my gosh, I finally got the job. Oh my gosh, I'm like working on this cool project, and then like it just might not actually work out. And that doesn't mean that like games isn't for you. That doesn't mean like making art in a professional setting isn't for you. There was like a lot of factors and reasons why things would and wouldn't work during that like time of me figuring out where I was going to land. But I also think that there's something to be said about like before the pandemic even and a bit after, like I made a point to within my ability like go out to game dev events and like meet people. And I can't even tell you how advantageous it is to essentially flex that muscle of like really engaging with people and like really wanting to get to know people. And I know I feel like a lot of folks in our industry are more neurodivergent or like struggle more socially. And I'll tell you this, it's unfortunately like doing things that like will make your life better can be really uncomfortable and hard. But it only gets more uncomfortable and more difficult the more you avoid it. You know what I mean? And the times where I had a foot in my mouth very early in my career because I was like a student and you know like I even am just like awkward and like where I'm at now where I'm so socially affluent with my words and my lingo that I'm talking to like very high up folks at my studio and I'm talking to stakeholders and I'm talking to people overseas. Like there was a lot that went into that journey and I truly believe some of my best memories were in discomfort. And I think that is like something that is like really hard for folks to grasp because we live in an era where we're trying to protect ourselves more and more, but sometimes what's best for ourselves isn't necessarily something that feels very warm and form-fitting. It's putting yourself out there and like maybe you go to an event and you talk to like two people, like that's still a win. You know what I mean? Like maybe it even is like going to like a festival and it's not actually game devs and you're just like talking to people and working on that. And I think that like my ability to converse directly turned into my ability to interview, directly turned into my ability to work with teams. And like I'm at the stage in my career now where I think I'm definitely being eyed for like being higher up than I am right now. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't really put myself out there.
So thank you for sharing that, for speaking to that. And you know, the analogy I've always liked, and I'm going to use this one just because I don't mean this in a negative way to what you were
Mhm.
saying. It's just more an easier one that I think a lot of people can understand or relate to. And it's like when people say like, well, how do I get started going to the gym? Right? Because you're always nervous when you want to start going to the gym, right? And the like the one of the things I read was like you just go. And it's like, well, what do I do when I'm there? It's like just show up. If you like sit and read a book, like what it's about is like creating the positive wow, I'm really schedule. We're gonna go schedule. Habit of like just being there to do the thing, and whether or not you full commit right away, like it's just more creating the mindset of I can go, I can start this, I can do this, right? And like going to networking events, if you're scared to talk to people, just showing up is like you said, it's if all you do is go and say hello to like one or two people, that's still better than not going, right? like taking the bus down to the event is still better than sitting at home and saying, I wish I went. Whether or not you get in the door, but like just, the baby steps to get in there to doing the thing that is going to be beneficial is, it can be a marathon and not a race, right? So like, um, that's what I took from what you were saying. And I don't mean that in a, dismissive way to use the gym or what have you. But
No, not
like
at all.
just the getting there and accepting that, yeah, you might be in a little pain, doing even like the slightest of baby steps, but like you'll find yourself after you're used to it, after you've started talking to people and such, that like it really is, you start to see the benefits, and like those benefits show up in the weirdest ways that you wouldn't expect, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I feel like I don't know, there's like a lot of people I've talked to over the years where like I've helped them do some interview prep and they're like I always ask like how good do you think you are at interviewing, and they go I think I'm pretty good, and then I go over with them and I was like okay, I think we need to establish like a new setting for you and how this stuff works, because I think a lot of people will come to these events or go into an interview with like a preconceived notion, and it can just be a really big blocker of them truly putting their best foot forward and truly putting their best self forward. um and yeah, like that's just like part of the equation, is like the more you stand in your way, the harder it will be to get over those hills.
Yes, exactly. Because like, and I can say this as someone that's done over 100 of these now. I've always done my best not to come in with like any preconceived notions of what anyone's going to say, right? Like I don't, because again, this is from experience, that if I come in thinking, oh, I know how you're going to answer A, B, or C, or what have you, that creates like a really weird narrative for how these conversations might go, right? Like nowhere at any point did I think this would be what we're talking about. However, if I tried to like plan on you saying certain things, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? Like it would have went a different way because I forced it in a weird way, and it's I stand in the way of you getting to share this, right?
Mhm.
So like what I'm meaning is like I completely understand that having learning how to structure your own mindset, like your own how things might work for interviews or what have you, or just any real conversation like at networking or whatnot. It just lets things actually happen without you always stepping on your own feet. You're always going to put your foot in your mouth. However, you might learn how to better roll after putting your foot in your mouth instead of just immediately freezing up and realizing what you did, right?
Yeah, because I put my foot in my mouth even now, even like this past few weeks, you know? But then it's like I make such a good effort to understand how like the equation of conversation works, and it's so easy for me to roll with any punch.
Yes, exactly. It's a rare it's a rare occurrence for you to say something so badly, like put your foot in your mouth so badly that you basically can't get a job in that town, right?
Mhm.
Um, I know someone that did that. It's very shocking how easy it is to do, but like you learn from experience how not to do that. And in his case, he did not learn how not to do that. So yeah, he can't work in the town anymore. Which is hilarious that he said something that stupid. But anyway, um, what I'm getting at is like, yeah, like rarely is it going to be that bad. So like, yeah, you'll learn from it. You'll learn how to roll with it, and you'll always get better in the future for how to do that. Um, Now, Courtney, I am also curious. Uh, what like was there a game that made you want to work in the industry? You had mentioned earlier that you kind of and I apologize if I misunderstood, but like you kind of knew that games weren't just magic and they didn't just appear out of thin air. Um, but like I'm wondering, like, was there a game that made you realize that and made you go, "Hey, this is something that I would maybe hope to one day be in like line to do or what have you?"
So that's so interesting because like there's the games that like make me want to make games, and then there's the games that made me realize I could make games. And like funnily enough, like I know I keep bringing up Ooblets, but I really feel like it was such a big moment for me, even if it's not necessarily like the thing folks know me for now. But it was like I remember joking with my friends, being like, "Oh, someday I want to work on a game like Ooblets, but not Ooblets because it'll be out before I'm in the industry." And then I ended up working on it, and I think that was just like such a key moment for me, and like something that really stood out to me about like how I was focusing my energy on things like fan art or things like style matching. And I've always done personal work in a way where it was like, oh, I want to get close to what I want, but it still represents something I really love. And games that I really love are truly games that I don't think I might ever work on, which is like the Legend of Zelda series. That is genuinely my childhood. It is truly such a hearth for me, and each game holds such a special place in my heart, alongside other series like Rune Factory. And while I appreciate older Rune Factory games more, I can't even tell you how exciting it was to find out that the studio stayed alive, because I believe after Rune Factory 4, it was like rumored that they had closed and like there were never going to be any more Rune Factories. And so far, they've come out with two more, most recently, Rune Factory Azuma. And it has been very fun and very charming to be able to still play games of that nature, even though there was a time where I thought they had just like gone away. Um, yeah. No, I have a lot of I feel like I have a lot of love for very complex story games and character driven games. I even have a very big place in my heart for indie games and even indie horror games, even though I don't actually play indie horror games because I am very scared. So I watch YouTubers play indie horror games like Manly Badass Hero or Northern Lion. Like I will not be the one to play them, but I will watch them from afar, and enjoy them. So I just think that like truly engaging with games is so important to me. I think almost I would say a good amount of genres are in my wheelhouse. I think the ones that kind of aren't are the ones that are more grounded in reality, like sports games or like modern shooter games. Those really aren't my thing, but I do really respect the craft. But I'm definitely into like the high fantasy, vast worlds and complex character arcs. And like honestly, like something that was so beautiful about like the Dark Cloud series was the ability to be so many different characters, which I think is true about Final Fantasy, but I played Dark Cloud earlier than I did Final Fantasy, so to me, like that was the novelty. Um, I recognize like a lot of my gaming knowledge is like out of order to the average person, so I'll like be like, "This was so groundbreaking," and they're like, "Okay, but another game did it like 10 years earlier," and it's like I didn't have a PC, so this was so groundbreaking for the Wii. You know what I mean? But yeah, I it's tough because I've always loved games. I just didn't ever think that like folks made them here because I was always just so integrated with like the Eastern market and like those games being marketed to us. And like I thought only like a few indie games were made here. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's like whole companies. And now I'm like in the city of all those companies. Not all of them, but LA's got a good amount where games are being made.
So thank you for sharing that. Sorry, I'm just laughing because it's it's weird that I have to say this, but it's at this point it feels like anyone mentioning Dark Cloud at all is just like a weird deep cut into games. Because like the amount of people that know anything about Dark Cloud 1 or 2 it seems to be like non-existent. So like I'm glad that you enjoyed that game
You
because
you
no
either
one else knows
know
about
it
it.
and you love it or you know nothing. There's no in between.
You're absolutely correct. That really does seem to be the case, and it's always such a wild thing to me. Just because it's, it's weird that it's a game that has not been reproduced in any way. Like I say this in the sense of you look at like Story of Seasons, Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley was kind of like the reproduction that really pushed it, into where we are now with farming sim kind of games, or that kind of direction, right?
Well, I do feel like the interesting thing about Dark Cloud is it's got a lot of aspects of different games, and we see aspects of it reproduced in other games. Like it's got like the different characters you switch who all have different like weapons that they specialize in. It's got like the world building where you're placing houses and like the villagers go, "Oh, I wish I could watch the sunrise," or like, "Oh, I wish I was by the bakery because I love the smell of bread." So you want to organize them in a very specific way. It's got like the dungeon roguelike crawl. And it's got like the overall world where you're essentially branching the world together through all different types of like folks from different backgrounds. But I feel like we haven't really seen it come together in the same way since. I mean, I'm sure there are games, and I just need to like be told where to find them. But there was something truly special about all the different marks Dark Cloud hit and pulled together that like we see now being specialized in our industry.
Yes, and kind of in the same vein as you, like if such a game exists, I would love to know about it. I would love a modern variation of Dark Cloud, or what have you, just because I played a lot of Dark Cloud 2. I thought it was fantastic, and Level 5 did a great job. But like, I don't, if such a game exists now where it brings over, I would love to know about it because I just don't know. Um, but um, but yeah, I do want to ask what it was like getting to, because rarely does this happen. Rarely do you get to like put out work or like style matching, as you said, a term I just wasn't familiar with. So there was no intentional what have you put on that. But like for style matching, for putting your art in that direction or what have you, um, like how wild is it that you were doing that and had a studio be like, hey, the game you're designing or designing, the game you're like matching to or what have you, would you like to work on it? That's wild, because rarely does that happen, because most of the time, from my understanding, if you're doing fan art or what have you, it's for games that have been out and finished and are not being worked on, right?
Yeah. I do think you'd be surprised how often studios are looking for essentially the art they've already made. It's actually my biggest feedback to a lot of people, especially if they have good technical and artistic skills, but they don't have necessarily anything that calls to me, is to make work that like reflects where they want to work. And like the truth of the matter is like my portfolio in general and my style in general is definitely more hand painted, even arguably pointed towards a studio like Riot. And I've not worked at Riot in my career. But because I was able to showcase my ability to bring my work to a certain caliber and like likeness to something such as League of Legends and Riot Games, I was able to essentially be seen as someone that could create work to the caliber that they need. And the difference was just like, oh, well, her stylized PBR needs a little bit of work, and that's it. Which the art director of that project firmly believed that like if you had really good hand painting fundamentals, stylized PBRs comes naturally, which I have also found now that I have truly solely since being more double and triple A works exclusively in stylized PBR. Would I like to hand paint again? Maybe, but I do see a lot of value and cherish a lot of what I've learned because I've been in stylized PBR and things like when I in one of my personal projects I made they're called chromas, which is essentially like when you make a skin in League of Legends, they come in different like color variations. And my ability to showcase that skill is also part of why I got hired, because that is a very, very common practice in cosmetics in character art, where essentially like that's something that happens on Paleo. We were making like 9 different colors, 3 different texture variants, and like my ability to showcase that I knew how to do that very specifically and like very practically showed them that I not only had like an artistic capability with style matching, I had a bit of that like very practical understanding of style and game dev that was easier to essentially like train me up than someone who does everything from scratch. And that isn't to say doing things from scratch isn't good, but to say that like having the understandings and the thinkings of like, okay, if I was wanting to make like 10 of these, how would I make this easy? If like some other artist opened up my file, what would that look like for them? And that was even relevant in my art test because like we had to turn in all of our files and I made sure like all my naming conventions and folders and everything were super clean. And I think even just stuff like that is like really important to being seen not only as an artist but as a developer.
So yes, I can understand what you mean on like something like naming conventions, right? Because like
Mhm.
a lot of people might overlook that, and you know the file structure is just garbled nonsense, right? And just having something that is professional and readable or easily like navigatable or what have you, um, as I'm sure you learned, is a shocking thing that is something a lot of people don't do, and just having that touch uh, is super important. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that as someone who works with outsourcing, that's crucial to have not only just for understandability across multiple artists and studios, but also like a lot of engines will use like their own tooling and like it relies on naming conventions. It relies on like keeping everything in a specific order and like being able to show like good practices alongside good art is like so key.
Yes, and you know, I can say this from experience, and I'm sure, you know, you've experienced this, maybe not you as in you did this personally, but having to deal with people that have. Having bad file structure means you can accidentally delete things because you have stuff linked in places you shouldn't, and then suddenly you've lost something that you worked on for like 5, 6, 7 hours, and now you have to recreate everything. And you know, when you do that, you lose a lot of motivation. And um, so yeah, so like I imagine you've seen that happen. Um, I I've done it personally, but I'm sure you've seen that happen where it's just like the nightmare of, well, that's a pain. You should have known better, right?
Yeah, it's I will say, like, there's even especially when you start talking about working an engine, like, the way things are connected to each other gets so specific and granular that, like, if you mess up one little name, you could be the person everyone tags being like, "Hey, why is the build broken? Hey, who did this? Hey, it looks like it was your change list," and it's so scary, even though it's fine, but it's so scary.
um, yes, you know, it's never fun to be the person that is getting tagged in a giant like Slack room when like the bug things come out, right? Like have 20 people being like, did you do this? You know what you did? Why'd you do like right? That's never fun. Um so yeah, so people learn those lists or learn how to not do that because yeah, it's fun. Um for everyone to be staring at you. um Now, Courtney, I'm also curious. So you mentioned a handful of different little games, um, and I'm wondering, do you have a favorite game or like a favorite game series or what have you? And like, what is it about those games that make you like hold them up on that pedestal, so to say?
I mean, it goes without saying that The Legend of Zelda is like sitting at the throne. You know what I mean? Like, it is truly like throughout each iteration, like, people talk about how games these days, like, oh, like, things are so repetitive, or like, oh, like, you can't, like, everything feels the same. Well, talk about a game where it essentially has so much of the same core values. Like you have the same three essentially characters almost always that like go through the story. You have very similar weapons, very similar items, and yet in almost every iteration that isn't genuinely trying to be a sequel, it feels so different. And each time it can bring such exciting like world building and storytelling to it. Like the difference between like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, who like released, I want to say like literally like 2 years apart from each other or something, is vast and wildly beautiful in their own ways. And like you really can't think of like a game where like it's a guy with blonde hair who wears green and like a princess, and then like somehow you're like trapped within this like Triforce narrative, and like there's sometimes sages and sometimes Ganondorf, and like somehow each game feels so special. Like even most recently with Echoes of Wisdom, which I absolutely adore. I think for anyone who's never played Zelda, it's actually the intro to the series, in my opinion. Because it kind of blends like old Zelda and new Zelda together very well. Um, it still manages to capture so much of the elements of old Zelda that like a lot of traditional fans are really attached to and really love, while integrating a lot of like the newer freshness that like the Breath of the Wild Zelda even like tries to bring into the table. And I truly appreciate like the medley that Zelda carries into the game. Um, if we're talking about games that I truly adore, and genuinely, I don't even think they're like the best games ever. I just adore them so much. It is the Rune Factory series, especially Frontier and Tides of Destiny, which is it because those games are both hand painted? Who's to say? Um, but both of them have such charm and such care put into their characters, put into their village, put into the world that you traverse. I absolutely love how you like grow relationships with each person, how you learn so much, how the story has that kind of like almost like dark cloud energy, like well like the world's gonna end unless you do this thing, and it's like so crazy, but like you start off so simple. um it really carries so much like charm and heart with a lot of its decisions, even though like sometimes it's repetitive or like a few of the characters are a bit reductive in their like personalities. Overall, those games hold such a special point for me. um and then there's like very specific droplets of games that I can think of, like To the Moon. I don't know if you know that one, but it's like a pixel narrative game about folks going into an elderly person's mind to like make his wish come true, and it's like about rewriting memories, and it's about like, well, if you change the past, what does that actually mean for his future? And there's just so many beautiful moments and like those smaller indie games that like truly ring throughout your memories when you like think back about like why gaming is special. And even in newer ones like I know I won't go too much into this game because the thematics of it are very dark, but they're very intense and interesting and important to talk about. And like Mouthwashing was a game that really like swept me off my feet, in the sense of like I forgot how emotional a game could make me feel, like how much both dread and just true unbelievable narrative a game could like put into me. Because like I think a lot of games these days are very fast paced, or are very trying to get something very quick reactions, quick this out of you. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think that there's something beautiful and haunting about a game that really takes its time to talk about everything, and like takes its stage very nicely. Like pacing is super important to me, and I think a lot of those horror indie games really truly know what they're doing when it comes to narrative. Yeah, I feel like I went a bit off topic, but I love games. I also love roguelikes, even though they're not very narrative heavy. They're just super cool.
So thank you for sharing all of that. Um sorry, my brain thought it had a thread. But no, thank you for sharing that. And one of the things I want to mention, you because like To the Moon, I have heard of it. Um, Amusingly enough, for whatever reason, every time I went to try and play it, it would crash for me on load. I haven't tried in a few years since I um got my new computer. It's been about 5 years, but like uh, for literally like three computers, because it's an older indie game. I want to say like 15
Yeah.
years, 10, 15 years at this point. So every computer I tried it on prior to this one, it would just crash, and I don't know why. So I'm aware of the game. I've made several attempts to play the game. It's just never. It's like the universe is like, no, you don't get to play this game.
You're not
But
ready for how sad it'll make you.
you know, but thank you for reminding me of the game is where I'm going because I need to try it. I know it's only like an hour, like 90 minutes kind of thing, so it's not a big experience if I remember correctly from what I, over years ago, what I read. Um, so like thank you for reminding me of it because now I have, now I'm remembering that I need to try and see if I'm still cursed to never be able to play it or not, right? Um, but no, thank you for that. And I also um the comment on Rune Factory, how like the stakes seem to go really high. I'm not gonna lie, I've always found the lead in for Rune Factory, the games. I've only played, I think, one, two, and one of the other ones. Um outside of like the new generation, quote unquote.
Mhm.
Um, and it always struck me as the wildest setup because it's like in the first one, you're a soldier from like this massive war and you have amnesia. And it's like you were one of the generals or something. And it's just like the amount of heaviness that they drop on you. It's like, what was any of this necessary? Like, why? Why are you going so hard to the wall? And then like the stakes for some of them ramp up. And it's like, this is a real wild take for a farming game where the focus is not on just farming and getting married now, but capturing animals in a dungeon to then do more farming, maybe in the dungeon, right? Um,
Yeah.
sorry, that just you mentioning how like the stakes ramp up was just always one of those things. I was like, what is happening? Like, why
Well,
are we
and
taking such a hard turn?
I do think that's what kind of sets it apart from other cozy games for me is like the fact that they're not necessarily like being like, well, we're a farming game, so this game's all about farming. Um, and I do think zooming in can be really nice, but I kind of adore how Rune Factory is like, yeah, we're a cute little farming game and we're gonna have a summer festival, and also the god of the world is trying to eat you and destroy all dragons, and you have to stop it. And it's like, what? Uh, just it just has so much fun and it brings so much heart. And I always love how like towards the end it makes like especially like the characters you interact with the most, like they always have like these words of encouragement and then like I hope this isn't spoilers, but like for a few of them, like the final boss will like insta kill you, and then someone will be like, "You're my friend," and you'll keep going, and you get like another life because of all the people that you've dedicated time to getting to know. And I just love how it like carries through and feels more like a world because they just take everything so far.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Sorry, I have a cat screaming at me for the sake of him deciding now is the time to scream. Um, but no, I understand what you mean. It's in my mind, it's the persona approach, right? Like it's not what you're capable of. It's what you're capable of because of the friends you made along the way. And in like Rune Factory's case, it's like the friends you made along the way as you're trying to win a cooking competition at the summer festival or what have you, right?
Yeah, because you grew the
Um,
best turnip.
yeah, so something that's completely nonsense, but is like somehow cemented that bond that that person is going to be the slap on the back that you need to win the final fight. Um, but no, thank you for speaking to that. And I like yes, it's always wild to me just to comment on a few things. It's always wild to me the um like how hard some of the narrative for some indie games go. I haven't played Mouthwashing. I'm aware of the narrative or the potential narrative. I don't know for sure. I haven't played to get an actual opinion on certain things, so that's the best I can say. But like, I understand what you mean because like if you look at a bunch of horror games, and I know it exists in other genres as well, but like horror games seem to go super hard on the theming and the writing and like the what have you, and it's always wild to me that they go that hard, you know?
Oh yeah, I feel like horror is the genre that explores the most. I think that's almost I actually think that's also just true in cinema. Like something about aspects of horror, it just like allows so much to be explored and so many different avenues and approaches and styles. Like I truly believe like in gaming, horror is the one with both the most vast art styles and the most different narratives and the most different like gameplay mechanics. Like and you'll even see recently there's been like horror cozy games where they can like take any genre and then they can like almost like swallow it whole and transform into yet another version of horror. And I think that is just such a beautiful and disturbing contradiction that is like horror in general. And I love horror, but for some reason I'm so scared. So I have to love it from like 10 feet back. But it is truly so interesting how deep that genre goes.
Yes, I understand what you mean, and like um, I believe that horror, like you said, has always, for cinema, and I imagine that it easily bleeds into non-cinema for games and such. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe horror was like one of the places that social commentary on um non-standard, I'm putting air quotes around that, topics or what have you, is where they were explored the most because they were easier to explore in that way and put them in different lights and like, how things, like how characters could be or what have you. For example, like modern horror, like something by Jordan Peele, the way he approaches it, right? Um, I think that's just, if I'm not mistaken, like harkening back to how horror originally was in terms of um, how like the theming and the topics and whatnot were approached were always things that were, I don't want to say counterculture, but things that were just not explored enough, and like that was the easier, again, quote unquote, avenue to do it. Um, so yeah, sorry, that was just more of a random additive that my brain was screaming at me over. But yes, I'm also kind of in the same boat as you, where horror games, I have to kind of avoid them, especially if they're like jump scare ones, because I hate jump scares. But
Same.
like horror games, yes, I'm the kind of person that also needs to enjoy them from afar, like once removed or what have you. Like I believe Amnesia, I think I watched years ago Markiplier beat it because I couldn't, or it just frustrated me too much the way, so I needed like the ability to like mute someone that was playing it or whatnot.
I would even for Resident Evil, I'd have to have like a tab that I had kind of hovering that I could drag over the gameplay really quickly if it got too scary or gross. But I still wanted to know, I still wanted to watch, so I was like, oh. So I feel you.
I'm happy to know that that's relatable because I don't feel as I don't feel as alone in the world knowing that. Um, But Courtney, I am curious, and I want to ask this one because, like, as we're getting on in the evening, and I'm getting on to the point where I don't want to steal much more of your time. However, I would feel remiss if I did not ask this before I really start to turn the lights on, and that's like outside of gaming, like, what is it that you do to like relax? Like, what do you enjoy doing? And if the answer is, well, it's just more gaming stuff, that's also perfectly valid. But I like to ask all the same in case it's not.
Literally wrote down for this one where I said maybe it's cheating, but I've been really interested into D&D lately, and I'm like, is that cheating? Because it's also kind of gaming, but I also feel like D&D is like its own universe, and I guess it's still gaming. But I've been really into like going to events around D&D or like going to like even like comedy shows from like the folks at Dropout, if you know them. I also really like going out dancing. There's this thing in LA called Labyrinth Masquerade Ball where like everyone dresses up. It's literally Ren Fair, but if your D&D party got invited to a ballroom, like a ballroom dance. And I think while my love for gaming and adjacent hobbies can't escape me, I do try to take them out into the real world as much as I can.
So thank you for sharing that for starters, but I I'm so the pitch that it's like if your D&D party got invited to a dance is terrifying because, I think think a lot of D&D parties have at least one murder hobo in there that they have to keep on a short leash. So that's a terrifying, terrifying social scenario where
Not
you're
at
just
my table.
allowing. Not well. I imagine there is a group huddled in the corner that are all the murder hobos just being gremlins, right?
There are people that go very gremlin. I even to speak to my own friends, a lot of them went as clowns this year, and then next year they want to go as rats and like spread the plague. So, I'm still going very like, oh, I'm like a tiefling and it's so fun and they're like, I'm gonna be a rat next year. And I'm like, whatever brings you joy, I will be there to take a picture of you in front of the fake castle set. Um, so you do get all types of energies. Like you'll get people literally dressed up as cosplay or even like cosplay transformed into like Renaissance attire, which is always really cool. But like you'll have everything from like someone as like a pirate ship as a hat to like the most gorgeous gown you've ever seen to like a guy dressed in all black with like glowing red eyes who goes, "Can I steal your soul?" And he like takes a picture of your outfit if he really likes it. So it really is a mixed bag of all things wonderful and weird.
So I apologize for what I'm going to introduce or put out into the world, but you mentioned that they want to go and quote unquote spread the plague.
Yeah.
I don't know what that might look like, but as someone that does their best to be controlled chaos, like a controlled chaos monster, what I am gonna ask or say is if that is their goal, there's a bunch of different kind of ink that is largely soluble with water that they could easily just, bingo dab people's hands with and say that's the plague. Not that I would know anything about bingo dabbing people as marking them in a social situation to be a real chaos nuisance, but that is a thing.
Well, I will say the event really encourages like trinkets exchange. So like you'll get like a little like someone will give you like a mushroom or a flower, like a little bottle full of like crystals. So, the play could truly just be a little trinket that they end up choosing or like mice or something fun. Like a cat toy mouse, like not, you know what I mean? But no, it's definitely an environment that like promotes a lot of people to have a lot of fun and creativity, which is like the environments that I really look to go to.
So thank you. Yes, thank you for sharing that. And you're probably right. Rubber mice or something is probably far safer than actively introducing what you would hope is water soluble, cleanable ink like products, right?
Especially because
Um,
some people paint their skin, so it's like, ooh, that's a whole
oh,
rabbit hole.
yes, yes. So yeah, thank you. But thank you for speaking to that. That's really interesting that such an event, such events, I should say, exist. Just I didn't know that that was a thing. So that's really cool. And also like, um, I hope that your D&D tables stay without little murder hobos because um, it, it can get weird. I personally have not had to deal with a murder hobo. The group that I play with currently, um, we all kind of take it seriously. We know what we're about or shouldn't be about. But a group I played with before briefly, one of the people was always just looking for their chance to be a murder hobo, and it was very exhausting to try and not let them murder hobo everything in existence because you're like, dude, you can't kill the quest giver, right? You can't kill him before he gives you the quest, right? Like that's the rule.
Yeah, and I'm like a lawful good type of character often when I engage with D&D, so like that kind of energy doesn't usually align with how I play the game. Though I've done an evil campaign. It's I still somehow manage to like struggle to be evil though. It'll be like like neutral evil or like very lawful evil where I'll still have like some rules where I'll be like at least I'm doing this because of my rules. So
Yes, I understand, Clee. And also, again, thank you for sharing that. Now, like I said, I'm aware that we're getting on with it, and I shouldn't, I should let you aim to, getting the lights on to let you get on with your evening. However, before I did let you go, I was wondering if you would mind if I hit you with some lightning round questions.
Sure.
Awesome. Now, as I said before we started recording, I do want to remind that these are meant to be nonsensical and lighthearted. So, by all means, feel free to answer them as quick as you want with as little or not little amounts of reasoning as you wish to share. They're no judgment, they're random. You can just answer whoever you see fit.
I'll try not to think, but I think very hard about a lot of things, so we'll see.
We'll see how that goes then.
Mhm.
um, because I just love asking this one. I know I ask it to pretty much everyone at this point, but it's one of my favorites. So, which video game character do you think is most likely to want uppies from a goth dommy mommy?
Oh, man. I did just play Rune Factory Azuma, and there's this one character called Woolby, and he's just like a little ram that can turn into a dragon, but he honestly stays in that little ram form, and it seems like he just wants to be cuddled, even though he's like, no, no, and then he's like, well, maybe. So I would say him.
Thank you for sharing for sharing that. I'm gonna ask you a new one. We'll see how this one goes. Who do you think rightfully feels more morally superior for returning the shopping cart to the corral?
Who is the most morally superior? I feel like honestly, I'm just thinking League of Legends, and I'm going like Caitlyn. She would just be very, very rules as written about it. Like she does break her own rules, but when it comes to her rules, you're returning that shopping cart, and she will not let you walk away until it's back.
So thank you for that. Now, final one.
Mhm.
Which video game character do you think is most likely to put orange juice over their cereal?
Oh man, that's there's so many ones that aren't smart. I would say Kirby. I would say Kirby. He could mix anything together and have a really good time. And considering how many food-based games he makes and has, like bro's gonna just roll down a hill of orange juice and go right into the cereal and then just inhale all of it and somehow turn into a jetpack.
There's probably some video game logic that would make that jetpack happen. But yes, I understand what you're saying. So thank you for sharing that. Now, Courtney, that was the lightning round. So, thank you for surviving that with me. I hopefully they weren't things you had to worry too much about. I know sometimes they can be true nonsense and catch people off guard, but you seem to have fared well. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, as I said though before that, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. However, if there was anything else you did want to discuss, like a cool game, what you're doing, something you feel more people should just be more aware of, by all means, the floor is yours. As well, please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which I'll also be including in the episode description.
More things to talk about. That's the thing about me is I can talk about anything, but my brain goes everywhere because I'm always just trying to think of like what is something else that like people need to hear. But the truth of that matter is like that's the thing. It's like everyone's journey is so different and everyone's entry into the industry is so different. And like people get in the industry right out of college. People get in the industry when they're 30. You know what I mean? Like you can never truly know the path that you'll walk that'll take you to where you want to go. But as long as you are finding time to like have joy for yourself and like make room for the things you want out of life alongside this, it's definitely worth it. I see a lot of people get sucked into the idea of the pursuit of games and then they let it eat them alive. And I would say to that, like, no ideal job is worth like your entire life. And there's so much, while the world is the way it is, there's so much joy and there's so many things to find out there and so many people to meet that it's really important to, even if you have this like North Star dream, to find the balance and the journey along the way because it really is so lucky to be in the industry. It is truly so many factors fell into place and like did hard work get you there? Absolutely. But truly, at the end of the day, like, so much about this industry is timing, the right place, the right people, the right game. And sometimes that timing takes a few years, sometimes that timing takes a few months. And while we wait for that timing, it's like what we do in between where we are now and where we are to get into the industry that is truly the time we're spending. Um, and that is kind of maybe probably where I'll leave folks off for advice from me. You can honestly find me mostly. I think I'm finally getting back into Twitter. But I also my Instagram's more so just me being a guy. But you can find my art station at Courtney Faye Millman. You can find most of my socials at Courtney_Faye FAY_M. And yeah, that's me.
So thank you for those final parting words of encouragement, words of wisdom, however you'd like to phrase it. I think they're absolutely wonderful. So thank you for that as well. I will make sure those links are in the episode descriptions for people to actually, you know, if they want an easy way to follow you or learn more about you, that they'll have the way to do that. And now, if there wasn't anything else though, Courtney, I will let you get on with your Sunday evening.
Awesome. I think that really is it. But I will say, like, if people ever want to DM me questions or like, especially when it comes to like portfolio stuff, I'm usually very happy to answer. And if I don't reply within like a week, please message me again because I have time blindness and I forget things. So yes, please reach out and I will do my best to get back to folks. But I wish everyone the best on their journey as well as I wish myself and I wish you. And thank you so much for spending time with me.
You know, Courtney, again, thank you. The pleasure was all mine. So thank you very much for just, you know, for making the time and being here to talk with me, to let me talk to you about stuff. So thanks again to Courtney for making time to have this conversation with me, and thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as a special thanks to Ron Jankies for the use of music from the title track from Road Steep. And be sure to check out the episode description for links to socials, websites, and other means that will allow you to learn more about or support Courtney and the podcast. While you're doing that, share, like, follow, and whatever else you think makes the algorithm work. Thanks till next time.